The wind howled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and something darker, something like fate. A man staggered forward, blood seeping through his torn shirt, his vision blurring. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be this vulnerable. Then he saw her. A girl stood in the lantern's glow, her eyes locked onto his, sharp, unyielding. She could have turned away. She could have left him to fate. But she didn't. She stepped forward. And in that single moment, the course of both their lives shifted forever. Because love doesn't always start with a kiss. Sometimes it starts with blood. And a choice. Don't look away. This story is only just beginning. The night was unforgiving. Wind lashed through the trees, rustling brittle branches like ghostly whispers, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and pine. Ivy Quinn tightened the shawl around her shoulders as she walked the familiar path home. The village had long since gone quiet, its modest cottages swallowed by darkness, their chimneys exhaling the last traces of warmth into the cold night. She was used to solitude. She had learned, from a young age, that the world did not offer kindness freely. If she wanted something, safety, knowledge, a future, she had to carve it out herself. But that night, fate had different plans. A sound, low, pained, broke the quiet. Ivy froze. Her pulse quickened as she turned toward the woods. Another groan. Ragged. Desperate. She should walk away. Whatever lay beyond the trees was none of her concern. And yet, something tugged at her, a pull she couldn't ignore. With careful steps, she moved toward the sound. Then she saw him. A man, barely standing, staggered through the undergrowth. Blood soaked his white shirt, dark and glistening under the moonlight. His face was striking, even in pain, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, tousled dark hair falling over his fevered eyes. He was trying to stay upright, but his body had other plans. Ivy rushed forward just as his knees buckled. Hey. Stay with me. She caught his arm, struggling under his weight. He was burning up, his skin hot against her fingertips. His lips parted, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to stop here. Well, you did. And you're bleeding. A lot, she muttered, shifting his arm over her shoulder. Can you walk? He let out a dry, humorless laugh. Not well. Figures, Ivy sighed. Come on. My place isn't far. She expected him to resist. To question why a stranger would help him. Instead, he let her lead him, as if he had no fight left. As if, for once, surrendering was the only option. Knox Wilder awoke to warmth. A crackling fire cast golden light across a modest wooden room, illuminating shelves lined with books and dried herbs. The scent of something sweet and floral lingered in the air. His body ached. The gash on his side throbbed, but it had been cleaned and bandaged. Someone had saved him. Then, as if summoned by his thoughts, she appeared. The girl from the woods. She carried a bowl of steaming broth, her auburn hair catching the fire's glow. She was young, early 20s, perhaps, but there was something in her green eyes that spoke of a life far beyond her years. You're awake, she said simply, setting the bowl on the small table beside the bed. I was starting to think you'd sleep forever. Knox shifted, wincing. Guess I owe you a thank you. You do. She sat on the chair beside him, studying him carefully. Want to tell me who you are and why you were bleeding to death in my woods? He hesitated. Telling the truth meant exposing himself. And yet, something about her made him want to. Knox, he said finally. Knox Wilder. Her brows lifted slightly. Wilder. As in. Yeah, he interrupted, sighing. That Wilder. Recognition flashed in her eyes. The Wilders were a name that carried weight, power, and more wealth than most could comprehend. If he was one of those Wilders, then he was a man who had no business being here, in a tiny village at the edge of nowhere. "Well, Knox Wilder," she said, leaning back in her chair. "You're lucky I found you when I did." He smirked, despite himself. "So I've been told." She didn't smile. Instead, she reached for the bowl, handing it to him. "Eat. You need your strength." He took it, their fingers grazing for the briefest second. A strange warmth settled in his chest. He had no idea what had led him here, to her, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. And Ivy, though she would never admit it, felt the same. This man, this stranger, was about to change everything. The world outside their small haven was relentless. Knox had always known this. His life had been dictated by power, expectations, and carefully orchestrated moves since the day he was born. But with Ivy, for the first time, he had found something real. Something untainted by wealth or family obligations. And that was exactly why they wanted to take it away. "You will end this nonsense, Knox." His father's voice was sharp, slicing through the heavy silence of the Wilder estate. The grand chandelier above them cast cold light on the marble floors, but it did nothing to soften the weight pressing against Knox's chest. His mother sat across from him, her expression unreadable but firm. "She is beneath you," she added smoothly, as if it were a simple fact, not an insult. Knox clenched his jaw. "I love her." His father scoffed. "Love?" He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Love does not build empires, boy. Power does. And power requires strategy. You will marry Eleanor Mercer, as planned. Their family will strengthen our standing, and you," he jabbed a finger toward Knox's chest, "will not throw away everything for a girl with nothing." Knox's fists curled at his sides. "I don't care about the damn empire. I won't marry someone I don't love." His mother sighed, feigning sympathy. "Then you leave us no choice." Knox's blood ran cold. His father leaned back, folding his arms. "If you refuse, you are no longer a Wilder. No inheritance. No company. No title. You walk away with nothing." The words struck like a physical blow. Nothing. He had spent his life in gilded cages, but at least they had been familiar. The Wilder name had always been a shield, a weapon. Without it, he was a man with no past, no future, nothing but the woman he loved. And to his parents, that was the worst fate imaginable. Knox stormed into Ivy's small cottage, his heart still pounding from the conversation. She turned at the sound, a soft smile forming before she saw the storm in his eyes. "Knox? What happened?" He didn't answer immediately. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, capturing her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing against her cheekbones as if memorizing every inch of her. "Come with me," he murmured. "We'll leave this place. We'll find somewhere new, just you and me." Ivy's breath hitched. "Knox? I don't care about the money. I don't care about them. All I need is you." For a moment, she let herself believe. Let herself imagine a world where love was enough. But deep down, she knew the truth. He might be willing to give up everything now, but what about in a year? 5 years? Would he resent her when he had nothing left? Would he look at her and see the woman who cost him the world? She couldn't let that happen. That night, while Knox slept beside her, Ivy made her choice. By dawn, she was gone. A single letter lay on the nightstand, her delicate handwriting scrawled across the page. "My love, I cannot be the reason you lose everything. This is the only way. Please don't look for me." Knox read the words over and over, hoping they would change. That she would walk through the door, tell him this was all a mistake. But the house was silent. Empty. And Ivy was nowhere to be found. The city had never felt like home. Knox Wilder had built his empire from nothing, proving to the world, and to his family, that he was more than just a name. He had power, influence, and wealth beyond measure. But none of it had filled the void she left behind. Ivy Quinn. For years, he had searched. Her absence was a wound that never fully healed, a question that had no answer. She had walked away from him, left without a trace. And no matter how much success he achieved, the truth was undeniable, he was still chasing her ghost. Until now. A name. A location. A single thread in the endless web of dead ends. She was here. And this time, he wouldn't let her slip away. The bookstore was small, nestled between a bakery and a flower shop, its windows fogged from the autumn chill. Knox had no reason to stop, until he saw her. Ivy. The world around him blurred. She stood just outside the store, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, her green eyes focused on something in the distance. Then, he saw the child. A little girl, no older than 3, held Ivy's hand. She giggled at something her mother said, her curly hair bouncing as she moved. Knox couldn't breathe. Because staring back at him, on that tiny, delicate face, was the undeniable proof of the years he had lost. Emerald green eyes. His eyes. His pulse roared in his ears, his body frozen in place as reality crashed over him. This wasn't just Ivy's daughter. She was his. Knox had lost Ivy once. He had spent years searching for her, years aching for what they could have been. Now that he had found her, found them, he would never let her slip away again. Standing in the warm glow of their home, he looked at Ivy, his heart pounding with certainty. "I love you," he said, his voice steady and sure. "And I'm done wasting time. I want to spend the rest of my life making up for every moment I missed, with you, with our daughter." Ivy's eyes shimmered with emotion, her breath catching as he reached into his pocket. Knox slowly dropped to one knee. "Marry me." A soft gasp escaped her lips. "Ivy, I want to protect you, cherish you, love you, every single day. No more running, no more distance. Just us, together, as a family. Forever." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then, Ivy let out a shaky laugh, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes." The word barely left her lips before Knox was on his feet, pulling her into his arms, pressing his lips against hers. It was a kiss filled with years of longing, of heartbreak, of love that had endured despite everything. A small giggle made them pull apart. "Mommy's happy," their daughter whispered, eyes wide with wonder. Knox turned to her, his heart swelling. He crouched down and lifted her into his arms, holding her close. "Mommy's happy," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And Daddy's never letting either of you go again." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the 3 of them sat together, Knox holding his daughter close, Ivy leaning into his embrace. No more searching. No more goodbyes. Just love. Just home. And as Ivy looked at the man she had never stopped loving, she knew, some people were always meant to find their way back to each other. True love is never easy, but it can withstand any challenge. Whether it's family pressure, distance, or years of separation, if 2 hearts are meant to be together, fate will always bring them back to each other. Knox and Ivy are proof of that. They loved fiercely, yet they lost each other, not because their love wasn't real, but because fear, sacrifice, and circumstance tore them apart. And yet, no matter how many years passed, no matter how far they strayed, they found their way back, not by chance, but because their love had never truly faded. Distance cannot destroy love. Time cannot erase what's real. True love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing each other, over and over again, despite the hardships. Because those who are truly meant to be will always find their way back.